I would like to first thank Dr. Sailesh for doing this for us. It's a great opportunity to be able to hear from one of the co-producers of Cowspiracy, of What the Health, and one of the writers of the climate paper as well. It's a huge honor. It's, to me, I find it a huge honor. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this. And Dr. Sailesh, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to first talk a little bit about the white paper or the position paper. The title of the position paper is Animal Agriculture is the Leading Cause of Climate Change. Let me see if I can get it to full screen. Okay. So I started working on this about 14 years ago in 2007. I started Climate Healers. And right from the outset, I realized that the way the environmental issues were being framed, that there was something wrong with it, okay, in the mainstream. So I started becoming very skeptical about the mainstream story. A few years ago, Gus Speth, who is the founder of NRDC, he was being interviewed, and he said, I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems. But I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. Okay? Now, he's a scientist and I'm an engineer. So as an engineer, I apply science. So I started wondering, okay, where is this selfishness, greed, and apathy coming from? And is it systemic? And if it is systemic, is there something we can do to make selflessness and generosity and activism normal in society, as opposed to selfishness, greed, and apathy? So that's how I started looking into it. And the more I looked into it, I realized that there are fundamental axiomatic problems in our civilization. Okay, so this is like Galileo discovering that the sun does not go around the earth, but the other way around. So as long as you keep believing that the sun goes around the earth, your calculations are going to be all wrong. In the same way, these axioms are making us do things that are all wrong, even though we are all trying to do good. So the fundamental axiom, the first axiom that I know is false, and that is fundamental to our civilization, is the axiom of consumerism. Okay? This says that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying a never-ending series of latent desires. And this is what I call the greed is good rule. And this is why the average human being is getting about 3,000 ads a day, in urban areas. So this is a false axiom, and so long as we buy into this axiom, and we have built an entire civilization on this axiom, we're going to be doing things all wrong. The second is the axiom of supremacism, which is also false. This axiom is that life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage may possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantaged for their pursuit of happiness. This is what I call the might is right rule. Now, we all know that if we apply a might is right rule, you will never have a sustainable planet. Okay? But this is sort of fundamental to our civilization. We are exploiting animals. We are exploiting nature just to grow our economy. And we are exploiting those who don't have the advantage that we have gained in this game. So these two axioms make us look at things differently. Okay? So this is why, there are two industrial machines of doom right now in the civilization. There is the burning machine, which is comprised of fossil fuels and industry. And that's mainly based on the false axiom of consumerism, because the burning machine is to create more and more things for us to consume. And the second is the killing machine. The killing machine is what drives animal agriculture and fishing. And that's primarily about the false axiom of supremacism. And the killing machine currently kills about 80 billion land animals every year and 1 to 3 trillion sea animals every year. Now, these two machines are literally destroying the planet. Okay? So they are the real reasons why we have all our environmental problems. But the mainstream discourse is not about shutting down these machines. The mainstream discourse is about how to fuel these machines differently. Because they don't want to change the axioms. So this is why the way IPCC and all these scientists are framing the environmental issues, they're trying to make us focus on the burning machine. And that too, just the fuel for the burning machine. They don't want us to look at the killing machine and see what it's really doing. Okay? So science gets distorted in the process. So civilization fundamentally is now an engineering shambles. Okay? I would not run an engineering project the way we are running civilization. So civilization says that, okay, we are human beings, so we're living on this planet, and there is a certain limit that the planet has with respect to climate change, with respect to biodiversity loss, with respect to land use, with respect to nitrogen and phosphorus loading of the planet. And we have exceeded these limits. We've exceeded the limits on climate change, we've exceeded the limits on nitrogen and phosphorus loading, we've exceeded the limits on how much land we can convert. And above all, we've exceeded the limits on how much biodiversity loss we can tolerate. In fact, we've exceeded it by a factor of 100 to 1,000. So this red thing that's sticking out should be sticking out 100 times the diameter of this circle. Okay, so it is clearly the number one issue. And we also have a couple of items here: air pollution and chemical pollution that hasn't even been measured. We don't even know whether we are over the boundary or not. And we clearly are, if you ask me, we clearly are over the boundary, but no one wants to measure it. If I run an engineering project like this, I would not have anything that works. Okay, and so this is absolute 101, engineering 101 no. You shouldn't be doing this. Now, even though we have exceeded the limits of the planet on all these things, we still haven't met the basic needs of humanity on a lot of issues. Okay, so we have a lot of reds on the inside as well. So this is why I say civilization is an engineering shambles. But the way it is being framed, the environmental issues are being framed, they are framing it so that we only look at climate change. We don't look at the other things. Why? So this is why, I wanted to know, why are they doing that? Why are they focusing just on climate change when we know there are lots of problems? It turns out because they're framing it so that the killing machine is not the leading cause. So they're saying the killing machine is not the leading cause of climate change, but it is the leading cause of biodiversity loss. It's the leading cause of land conversion. It's the leading cause of everything else. These are the black dots. Okay, the black dots represent role of agriculture. Agriculture is the killing machine. So the killing machine is the leading cause of most of these things, but they're framing it so that it's not the leading cause of climate change. This is why the mainstream discourse is all about climate change, even though climate change is still in the yellow region here. The red regions are about biodiversity loss, nitrogen and phosphorus loading. These things are all in red right now, okay, according to our estimates. So it's like a patient who has heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and a fever. And the doctor is only focusing on the fever. And you say, what the heck? How can he heal you if he only looks at the fever? Why are they doing that? Because they can frame it as the fuel has to be changed for the machines. They don't want to change the machines. They don't want to shut down the machines. So that's what I mean by misdirecting public attention. So that got me thinking, is it really true that the killing machine is not the leading cause of climate change? Because if they're only focusing on climate change, I need to look at that. So I started looking at that, and I realized that they're actually lying to us about it. Because our food system is an engineering shambles. Okay? Fundamentally, we eat about 1.6 billion tons of food, which is shown on the right-hand side of this block diagram. Of that 1.6 billion tons, these are all dry weight. Okay, so we take out the weight of the water and just look at the dry weight of the food we're eating. of the 1.6 billion tons, 0.19 billion tons is animal foods that comes from dairy, eggs, meat, all put together. 1.35 billion tons is plant foods that comes from grains, nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruits, all put together, and processed plant foods. And 0.05 billion tons is from fish or seafood. So to eat 1.6 billion tons of food, we are extracting 9 billion tons of plant food from the planet, from 49% of the ice-free land area of the planet. So we take 7.27 billion tons of that 9 billion tons and feed it to our animals. And they produce 0.26 billion tons of food. That goes into this industrial processing block, and out comes 0.19 billion tons. Okay. Now, in addition, this animal agriculture industry is also producing 0.14 billion tons of other substances like skin and blood and bones, which go into other processing blocks that produce clothing and chemicals and pharmaceuticals and all kinds of things that we produce from these animals. So the animals are really being used as objects. Okay? But from a food standpoint, this is why I say going vegan is the most important thing you should do if you want to get rid of this block. This block is killing the planet, the livestock production block, the animal agriculture block. So it's not just about changing our food, it's also about changing our clothing, or not using animals for any purpose whatsoever. That's how you'll get rid of this block. Because if you only change the food, the industry is perfectly capable of raising animals just to skin them, just to use their skin or their blood or their bones. But anyway, the food system is fundamentally driving the use of animals, because most of the animals are in the food system. And it's an engineering shambles. And the way we are using the earth, we are basically misusing. Okay, this is essentially, I don't know, I call it, this again is a shambles, right? So 85% of our food, as I pointed out to you, comes from plants. And that's coming from just 6% of the land area of the planet. Okay, 6% of the land area of the planet is producing 85% of our food. Then to produce 12% of the animal foods we eat, we are using 40% of the land area of the planet. And most of that is in grazing land. 37% is from grazing land. And that grazing land only stores 2% of the land carbon. So we have cut down so many forests, only 9% of the forests are left. This is all timberland, for logging and for plantations. These are basically plantations. But we count them as forests. This is how they pretend that the forests are still there. And then these are deserts and unused land, deserts and mountains, etc. But most of the deserts actually came from grazing land. So 3%, so 12% of the food comes from 40% of the land, and it's basically being misused. And the other 3% comes from the ocean, and to get that, we are actually destroying the ocean to get that 3%. The amount of subsidies for fishing is $35 billion a year, and with that kind of money, you could have really fed everybody. So you could have had zero hunger. So it costs only $30 billion to feed everybody. So this is why I say animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change, because the land use, the opportunity cost of the land use is not being counted in any of the mainstream discourse. If we didn't have these animals, if we could take that 12% also from plants, or the 15% also from plants, we could have done it with less than 12% of the land area of the planet. And the remaining 37% can be given back to forests. And if we give it back to forests, that will literally reverse climate change, because you can sequester all the excess carbon that's in the atmosphere. And it will also give room for wild animals to come back, okay, to start living again. So I looked at, okay, how would we power down the machines? Because I'm not interested in just fueling the machines differently and then keeping the machines going, because it's killing the planet. So I said, how would you power down the machines? And to do that, I did an engineering analysis. And this is also there in the white paper. And so you start off by looking at, okay, what is really heating up the planet? Carbon dioxide is adding another 1.68 watts per square meter of heating. Methane, nitrous oxide, and the other greenhouse gases are adding 1.7 watts per square meter of heating. Methane by itself is about 0.97 watts per square meter of heating. And then there are aerosols like sulfur dioxide and white carbon, that basically cool the atmosphere. And that's about 1.1 watts per square meter of cooling. So overall, we get 2.29 watts per square meter of heating on the planet. These are all from IPCC's fifth assessment report, and the base year is 1750. And basically, this is valid as of 2014, I think. So you look at this and say, okay, now if I shut down the burning machine, what happens to this number? So it turns out if I shut down the burning machine, I will shut down 87% of the CO2 emissions on an annual basis. But on an annual basis, 87% of the CO2 emissions is causing an additional 0.027 watts per square meter of heating. Then you'll also cut down 23% of the methane emissions, which comes from natural gas and so on. And that will cause 0.022 watts per square meter of heating to be removed from the atmosphere. But then we also eliminate 100% of the sulfur dioxide, which is a cooling gas. So if you shut down the burning machine, you will actually remove that cooling, which means it will actually heat by 0.95 watts per square meter. So therefore, sum total is that if we shut down the burning machine today, we will heat up the atmosphere by an additional 0.9 watts per square meter. Is that really what we want to do? This is what Hansen called the Faustian bargain of fossil fuel. It's a deal with the devil. So you have to keep burning these things because they're actually cooling the atmosphere. So now you do the same thing with the killing machine. What is the annual emissions of the killing machine? So the killing machine is responsible for 29% of the CO2, which is 0.009 watts per square meter of heating. It's responsible for 37% of the methane, which is 0.035 watts per square meter of heating. And it's also using up 37% of the land on which, if you return the original forest, you will start sequestering or storing 34.5 gigatons of CO2 every year. So that's like a 0.06 watts per square meter of heating that you're doing through the killing machine. So if you shut down the killing machine, it'll actually cool the atmosphere by 0.1 watts per square meter every year. So as an engineer, if you ask me, how would you shut these two machines down? I would say the number one thing you need to do is to shut down the killing machine as soon as possible. There is nothing that does not improve when you shut down the killing machine. And then you can power down the burning machine 11% per year over the next 9 years. And when we do that, you won't heat up the atmosphere more than we're heating it up today as we are shutting down the burning machine. That's the right way to do it. Okay? But that's not what the mainstream discourse is. The mainstream discourse does not even talk about the killing machine. They're only focusing on the burning machine, and they're actually focusing on changing the fuel for the burning machine, which is equivalent to basically shutting it down. Okay, so in essence, they're literally heating up the planet more than they need to, because they don't want to change the system. Now, Richard Feynman, when he was asked to go and analyze what happened to the Challenger disaster, he said, for a successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations, for nature cannot be fooled. Now, in the Challenger disaster, 7 people died in 1986. Okay? And when they analyzed it, they found out that the engineers actually told them not to launch. The engineers refused to sign off on the launch. And they were overruled by the administrators. In the same way, today, we are talking about the potential for killing 7 billion people. And as an engineer, I'm telling you, shut down the killing machine first. And if you don't do that, we are in big trouble. Okay? And to do that, you really have to change the axioms of civilization. The true axiom instead of the axiom of consumerism. The true axiom is the true axiom of inner peace, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by seeking it within ourselves. It's not out there, it's within you. This is the self mastery rule. And second is the true axiom of Homo Ahimsa, which is that all life is one family, where we each bring our unique skills to give all we can, receive all we need, and become all we are. This is the Vitality Code rule. And can we not build a civilization on these two axioms? Of course we can. And we can do that. Each one of us can start in our own lives to implement these. The first thing I tell people to do is to go vegan as quickly as possible and as local as possible and as organic as possible. So this is local, organic, vegan eating. Love. Okay? That's the number one thing you can do. Number two thing is you can do is to be a conscious consumer. Remember, the first axiom of consumerism is false. So I was invited to join a Buy Nothing Day back in 2009. And I thought to myself, my God, we have become such a consumerist society that we have to constrain ourselves from buying on one day. So I decided to start the opposite, which is Buy Everything Day. So I buy nothing on every other day. And only on that one day in the year, I go buy everything I need. And the remaining days, I just make a shopping list. And guess what? When my Buy Everything Day comes, I usually cross off everything on my shopping list also. But other than food and gas, I don't buy anything else. And then third is join a community and contribute. So we have this Vegan World 2026 convergence. We want to get to a vegan world by 2026. It's absolutely essential we do this because the ecosphere is screaming for us to do this. And we meet every 3 months. So the next meeting is going to be on April 24th and 25th. And you can join us by going to this bit.ly link, bit.ly/wedgetix5. Click on that and it'll take you to the registration page. So that's the second quarter convergence that's happening. And then there'll be one in the third quarter and fourth quarter and so on. So this is how we are getting together, figuring out how to help each other get to a vegan world as soon as possible. And we are also working out the infrastructure, the institutions, the constitution, and the new currency that needs to happen to create a completely vegan world by 2026. So we are doing this similar to the way I worked on the internet. It's a very similar process that we went through. And my granddaughter drives me. I promised her that the world will be vegan by the time she is 16. And she thanks you for being here. Thank you all.